The dense canopy of Kepler 4I42b filtered the twin suns' light into dancing patches of amber and emerald across the jungle floor. David Chen wiped sweat from his brow as he adjusted the atmospheric scanner strapped to his chest. 3 months into the xenobiology survey mission, and the humidity still felt like breathing through wet cloth. "Readings are off the charts in Sector 7. Emma Rodriguez's voice crackled through his comm unit. "The biodiversity here is incredible, David. I'm picking up at least 47 distinct life signatures within a 100-meter radius." David smiled despite the oppressive heat. Emma's enthusiasm for alien ecosystems never dimmed, even after countless worlds. As the team's lead xenobiologist, she approached each new discovery with the wonder of a child seeing snow for the first time. "Copy that, Emma. I'm about 2 clicks northwest of your position, following some unusual mineral formations. The geology team will want to—" A sound cut through the jungle's symphony of chittering insects and distant howls. David froze mid-sentence, his hand instinctively moving to the emergency beacon on his belt. It wasn't the roar of a predator or the crash of falling debris. It was crying. High-pitched, desperate, and unmistakably intelligent. The sound tugged at something primal in David's chest, the same response humans had evolved over millennia to protect their young. "Emma, are you picking this up?" David whispered into his comm. "Affirmative." It sounds like a child." David's scanner showed no human life signs in the area. The expedition had strict protocols about civilian populations, and Kepler 442b was supposed to be uninhabited by sentient species. Yet the crying continued, growing more frantic with each passing moment. Against protocol, David began moving toward the sound. His boots crushed alien ferns that released spores of bioluminescent powder, creating a trailing constellation behind him. The crying grew louder, punctuated by what sounded like words in an unknown language. Through a curtain of vine-like structures that pulsed with internal light, David emerged into a small clearing. There, huddled against the base of a massive tree with bark that resembled crystallized mercury, was the source of the crying. She couldn't have been more than 3 feet tall. Her skin held an opalescent quality that shifted between blues and purples in the filtered sunlight. 4 arms wrapped around her knees as she rocked back and forth, her large, luminous eyes streaming tears that sparkled like liquid starlight. Delicate antennae drooped from her forehead, and gossamer wings, torn and muddy, lay crumpled against her back. David's breath caught. She was beautiful and terrifying and utterly alien. Yet the universal language of distress transcended species barriers. This was a lost child, afraid and alone. "Hey," David said softly, crouching down several meters away. "Hey, it's okay." The alien child looked up, her crying stopping abruptly. Her eyes, 3 times larger than a human's, fixed on David with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. She spoke in her own language, rapid and musical, pointing deeper into the jungle with one of her 4 hands. "I don't understand," David whispered, his voice carrying every ounce of gentleness he could muster. "But I want to help." Emma's voice buzzed through his comm. "David, I'm reading massive life signs converging on your position. You need to get out of there now." The little alien girl seemed to understand the urgency in Emma's tone, even through the communication device. She stood on unsteady legs and reached toward David, her 4 arms outstretched in the universal gesture of a child seeking comfort. David didn't hesitate. He scooped her up, surprised by how light she was, no heavier than a human toddler despite her extra limbs. She clung to him with desperate strength, her tears soaking into his expedition suit. "It's okay," he murmured, though his own heart hammered against his ribs. "I've got you." Through the trees, David could see them now, massive forms moving with predatory grace. The alien girl's people, perhaps, or the creatures she'd been fleeing from. David's scanner screamed warnings about approaching life forms, each one registering as large as an earth elephant. But as the shapes emerged into the clearing, David realized his mistake. These weren't predators. They were searchers. The lead figure stood nearly 8 feet tall, with the same opalescent skin as the child but aged into deeper purples and golds. Her 4 arms carried what appeared to be scanning equipment, and her gossamer wings, intact and magnificent, caught the light like stained glass windows. Behind her came others, all sharing similar features but varying in size and coloration. The moment the large alien saw the child in David's arms, she cried out, a sound of pure relief that needed no translation. The little girl responded immediately, her forearms reaching toward what was obviously her mother. But she didn't let go of David entirely. One small hand remained clutched in his shirt as she chattered excitedly in her musical language, pointing at him repeatedly. The mother approached cautiously, her large eyes studying David with intense curiosity. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in David's chest. Though he couldn't understand the words, the tone was unmistakable. Gratitude. Emma's voice crackled through the calm again. David, whatever's happening, you've got half the expedition heading your way. The readings are... It's okay, David replied, gently transferring the child to her mother's waiting arms. It's more than okay. The reunion was beautiful to witness. The alien family surrounded the lost child, their opalescent skin brightening in patterns that pulsed like heartbeats. The little girl gestured animatedly toward David, and suddenly all eyes were on him. The mother approached again, this time extending something toward David, a small crystalline structure that hummed with internal energy. When David hesitated, she pressed it into his palm and spoke in her melodic language, then attempted something that made his heart stop. Thank you. The words were heavily accented and clearly difficult for her to pronounce, but they were unmistakably English. Somehow, in the span of minutes, she had begun to decode his language. David looked down at the crystal in his palm, then back at the assembled aliens. You're welcome, he said simply. As the alien family began to move back into the jungle, the little girl broke away one final time. She ran to David on her unsteady legs and wrapped all four arms around his knee in the tightest hug she could manage. Then she looked up at him with those luminous eyes and spoke a single word in perfect English. Friend. David watched them disappear into the alien jungle, the crystal warm in his palm. Emma found him there 20 minutes later, still staring at the spot where they'd vanished. What happened? She asked, studying her scanner readings with confusion. David smiled, pocketing the crystal that hummed with the promise of future communication. I think, he said, humanity just made its first real friend among the stars. In the distance, carried on alien winds, David could swear he heard the sound of laughter, musical, joyous, and free. The sound of a child safe at home, telling the story of the strange creature who had answered her cries in the jungle. And in that moment, David understood what it truly meant to be human. Not the strongest or the smartest species in the universe, but perhaps the first to hear a crying child and feel compelled to help, regardless of how different they might be.